Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's virtual discussion. We will begin shortly. My name is Charles Parasino, and I'm the Communications Director for Congressman Larson. I see we already have about 100 people who have joined. So as a reminder, if the Zoom meeting reaches capacity, you will be redirected to our stream on Facebook Live. First, we will hear from Rep. Larson, then Attorney General Tong, and finally take some of the questions sent in by constituents on our website. Next, I will turn it over to Congressman Larson.
Well, thank you, Charles, and thank all of you for joining us this evening. And I especially want to thank Attorney General Tong for making himself available, given his incredible schedule and how busy he is, not only protecting and saving Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid from the Trump administration, but just in the daily course of business that the Attorney General deals with for the state of Connecticut. It's somewhat astounding that we find ourselves in this situation, especially given that when you have two billionaires uh, in both Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the Doge cronies that they've uh, put together who are going after the nation's fundamental safety net for capitalism and entrepreneurialism in both Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Social Security, as everyone knows, introduced by FDR, and Medicare and Medicaid by Lyndon Baines Johnson. But they are such a critical part of every American's life. And that's why we're so engaged to make sure that we protect Social Security. But it's not just a matter of protecting it, but that's where we start. Why? Well, unfortunately, we have an administration that believes that the best way to deal with Social Security is to privatize it. Now, this, of course, has been tried in the past. It was tried by Ronald Reagan. It was tried by George Bush, and it was thwarted. And but it hasn't stopped, especially Elon Musk, who believes that there's a way out there to get their hands on this trust fund money. Why? Well, first and foremost, Trump has vowed to make the tax cuts of 2017 permanent because they do sunset this year in 2025. But he's also charged Elon Musk with coming up with $2 trillion in cuts so that they can fund and pay for these tax cuts. Now, here's the irony, and it's more than an irony. Of those three areas, Elon Musk has been very clear that, he's focused on making sure he achieves this goal. And he says of the federal budget, 70% of it is made up of defense, Medicare and Medicaid, and Social Security. But only one has a trust fund. It's the trust fund of your money paid into by all Americans. And coincidentally, it just happens to have $2,700,000,000,000 in its trust fund. It's solid and it's sound, but it's under attack. How so? Well, what Trump and Musk are out to do is to go after the Social Security agency first. They want to plant a seed in people's minds that Social Security is unstable, that it's not there, it's not working. You can't get your calls returned, you can't get to a place effectively. And how are they doing that? By issuing an executive order and closing and already losing more than 7,000 employees in a agency that deals with the largest insurance program in the country. And that's what Social Security is. It's an insurance program paid for by the American people with your money, guaranteed by the federal government, who is charged with making sure that those investments remain sound and secure. The last time the federal government did anything to enhance Social Security, Richard Nixon was president of the United States. So I know what many of you may be thinking. No, wait a minute. Didn't something happen back during, when Tip O'Neill was Speaker of the House and Ronald Reagan? Yes, Reagan, as I said earlier, tried to privatize it, but Bob Dole thought that Social Security should be saved. But what they did is they came up with a compromise to extend the solvency, but they did that simply by raising the age back in 1983 from 65 to 67. So, yes, that extended the solvency, but it did so by cutting Social Security. Why? For every year you raise the age of Social Security actuarially is a 7% cut in your benefits. So, how does it make any sense, even when our colleagues on the other side of the aisle are saying, well, people are living longer? Yeah, they are. So, if you're living longer, you should be living on less. They want to raise the age to 70. That's a 21% cut in people's benefits. The average benefit for Social Security for a male is 18,000, for a female is 14,000. Nobody is getting wealthy on Social Security. And as the Attorney General knows, more than 5 million of our fellow Americans already get below poverty level checks from Social Security, from the wealthiest nation in the world, from the country's #1 insurance program, because of lack of congressional interest in making sure that we change and raise those amounts. That's what my focus is not only to save Social Security, but to enhance it. And here we are faced with a group that is very skillfully out to try to privatize it. First, by making Social Security look weak and frail and have people be upset with it and say it's not going to be there, and then claim that they have a better way to return more money to people. Except when you ask them this question, is it guaranteed? And the answer is no. And as all Social Security recipients know, Social Security has never missed a payment. We don't have to go back to 1929 to underscore this example. We can go back to 2008 and 2009 during the recession when people saw their 401k become a 101k or lost their benefits altogether. During that time, and since its inception, Social Security has never missed a payment. Not a pension payment, not a spousal payment, not a widow's payment, not a dependent child payment, nor a disability payment, because it's the guarantee of the United States government and we the people, and it is funded by, yes, we the people. That means you, the Attorney General, myself, and everyone listening out there. Except, believe it or not, there are some people who don't pay, some who don't pay anything, some who are done paying on January 1st. And they happen to be the wealthiest amongst us, which is why our proposal, as suggested by President Biden at the time, is that what we do is we lift the cap on people who are making over $400,000. Now, I'm going to take a wild guess that there's not many of you listening out there that are making more than $400,000. But imagine those individuals pay nothing or little at all. And all President Biden was saying is, listen, you have to pay the same thing that every other American does in order to make sure that the safety net for capitalism and entrepreneurialism stays solvent and is able to be there for our people as it has, and as we've said, has never missed a payment. That's why we're so concerned about what's going on in Washington, because they're trying to do this kind of, well, in a subterranean manner. Trump, on one hand, is saying, I'm not touching Social Security. I don't know what anyone's talking about. I campaigned on Social Security. Meanwhile, Elon Musk is going on Fox News and saying how he's targeting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid because that's where the money is. And he's been asked by the president to find $2 trillion. And as I said earlier, it's no coincidence that there's 2,700,000,000,000 in the Social Security Trust Fund, all your money. And that's what they have their eyes on. And they're going to try to do it in a way where they confuse people into thinking that Social Security isn't functioning the way it is, and it's time for a change. And they're going to try to show you that they can demonstrate how in the private sector they can give you a greater turn. Well, that's been tried before and it's failed, but it's our responsibility to make sure that Americans' number one anti-poverty program for the elderly and the number one anti-poverty program for children stays intact. The program that more veterans rely on for disability than they do through the VA is what the Attorney General and I are fighting for. I was so proud that when Trump first came out with the proposal, I didn't have to call the Attorney General. He contacted me immediately and said, how can we get involved? How can we help? How can we make sure that Connecticut offices and other offices around the country step in? How can I utilize my office and reach out to attorney generals across this nation and make sure this doesn't happen? It's great to know that you can lean on a partner like that who not only calls to help, but rolls up his sleeves and gets it going immediately. And with that, my high honor to introduce our Attorney General, Andrew Tong.
Thank you, Congressman Larson. Thank you for being such a great leader on Social Security, on so many issues for so long. And the real reason why so the way this works is attorneys general across the country are on the phone. We're in constant contact with each other, and we split up the work. We say, on birthright citizenship, you're going to do this, on DOGE in the Treasury Department, you guys are going to do that. On NIH funding, another group is going to do that. So the AGs split up the work. But as soon as Social Security popped up on everyone's radar, I raised my hand and I said, Connecticut is going to lead on Social Security because I heard John Larson's voice in my head. And being a partner with Congressman Larson, being the most consequential voice on Social Security, made it a not just a political and legal imperative, but a moral obligation for Connecticut to lead. I'm also leading because I'm one of those families that Congressman Larson just talked about. My parents are both over 70. My dad's over 80. They're receiving payments right now. It is supplemental and helps them manage their retirement and to live safely, securely, and not have to worry about food and energy, and basically in all ways make the rent, which is what everybody needs to do in order to live safely and securely and have health care and to be cared for after they busted their rear ends for me and my sisters for all of their lives, 7 days a week, 12 to 15 hours a day. That's the promise of this country. And that's the promise of Social Security. And that's why Congressman Larson and I are fighting so hard. This is a really personal moment for so many of us. And that's why we're taking on these fights, from birthright citizenship. I'm a citizen by right of my birth in Hartford Hospital 51 years ago, to Social Security, to special education, Department of Education, everything that we're fighting on. It impacts so many people here in Connecticut. And people ask me all the time, Congressman Larson, what can we do? You know, how can we stop this? And the answer is, the Constitution gives us an answer: checks and balances. We are a check on this president, on his lawlessness, on the way in which they've already laid off 28,000 people. And they're going to take more from the Social Security Administration. We are a check on this president and on Elon Musk by going into court and suing them and holding them accountable. And we're working right now on our legal strategy around Social Security. We're going to do everything we can, not just to protect it, but to preserve it for generations to come, and to fight this effort to disable it, to dismantle it, and to privatize it. As Congressman Larson said, that's what they're doing. They're trying to tear it apart with Elon Musk and his band of hackers and wannabe stormtroopers. They're trying to tear up Social Security like they're trying to tear up the rest of the federal government. And we're not going to let them. And so it's my honor to stand side by side with Congressman Larson in this fight. And with that, Congressman, happy to turn it back to you and to questions.
Thank you, Attorney General. And listen, on this past Tuesday, Rosa DeLauro, myself, and Dick Blumenthal were outside of the Middletown Social Security Regional Office, sticking up for those employees and assuring people that we're in this fight. And while the administration, the Trump administration, continues to target these areas, I was in Torrington the week before, where another one of our regional offices has been rumored to be targeted, and more than 1,000 people came out in the rain. And then it was followed by a rally at which the Attorney General addressed a crowd of over 8,000 people at the state capitol, again, assuring them that we're in this fight and we're not going to let this happen. And especially when the presidency is controlled by a Republican president, the House is controlled by a Republican majority, and the Senate is controlled by a Republican majority. Those senators and House members need to hear from people as well. Not only people in their own district, which I'm sure they will, but because of what's happening, because of the action and because of the reporting in the media, people are saying, oh, wait a minute, what's going on here? And why are you letting this happen? So it's going to be that kind of continued pressure. And when you don't have control of the House or the Senate in Congress or the executive branch, it's so vitally important that our states and governors, and I want to commend Governor Lamont and the constitutional officers, but it ends up being the Attorney General of the state that's going to lead this battle in conjunction with other attorney generals across the nation to thwart these efforts and take it under our system where it goes when there's injustice that's intuitively obvious to everyone. So I can't thank the Attorney General enough for joining us. And let us now throw it open to questions, Charles. And I know that there are some that have already been sent in, and we can take them.
Thank you, Congressman. Our first question comes from Brian in West Hartford, and he asks, what steps are Democrats in Congress taking or considering to block or reverse the administration's actions, other than simply speaking out?
Well, of course, speaking out is important, but to answer that specifically, speaking out is not enough. And so we've introduced legislation and you might have heard me say earlier, both as it relates to preventing the closing of these regional offices, and also, and this is something that should concern everyone, and again, the Attorney General knows far more about this, but going after people's personal data. And for what reason does Elon Musk and these 24-year-old Doge employees have going after people's personal information and data? Why are they using it? And why is someone like Elon Musk, who does business with the federal government, is paid by the federal government, unaccountable and not have to come before the Congress as we continue to demand? We also have put together legislation that just doesn't simply protect Social Security, but expands it for the first time in more than 50 plus years, including across the board increases, including no longer having your Social Security taxed, including making sure that females are treated equally, and raising more than 5 million people who get below poverty level checks currently from Social Security out of that, and creating a new floor for Social Security where no one in the United States who contributes to the Social Security Fund through FICA can ever retire into poverty. That's what Roosevelt intended. That's what previous Congresses intended. That's what we intend make happen. And yes, we're reaching out to our Republicans on the other side. And the more attention and media that this gets, the quicker I think that we're going to get a result, because these are positive results for the American people. This is the #1 anti-poverty program for the elderly in the country, as well as the #1 anti-poverty program for children until the child tax credit becomes permanent. So let me turn it over to the Attorney General to see if he
Yeah,
wants to respond.
let me just say, and first of all, I apologize. I'm running around. It's a little busy right now in the Attorney General's office, as you can imagine. We're fighting on so many fronts, so I apologize for being in the car, for the shakiness of my video if it's not coming through as clearly as it should. But let me just say, speaking out is incredibly important right now. And because at the end of the day, I don't have to tell you, we're not on the precipice of a constitutional crisis. We are in one. Okay, we already have selective non-compliance with court orders, including an order of the Supreme Court. So we're not almost there, we're there. And the in that situation, what's the answer? The answer is all of you. It's all of you speaking out and making this as hard as it can possibly be. And Congressman Larson is right, leaning on our Republican friends and colleagues, of which I have many, with whom I work with. Today, we got a major victory in the Google antitrust case. And that happened with Democrats and Republicans acting together. And so when people ask me, they say, William, what do you need right now? Of course, I need resources. Of course, I need lawyers. But what would really help you? What I say is Republicans standing up with us, standing up to this president, standing up for Social Security, standing up for special education, standing up for immigrants who power our economy, because that affects everybody. It's not red or blue. It's not Democrat or Republican. Social Security is party agnostic. It doesn't care what party you're in or if you're unaffiliated. Social Security is there for everybody. And so speaking out and putting pressure on people ultimately is the answer to change the trajectory of where we're going. But of course, in the meantime, we're suing left and right. I'm swinging every single day, and we're going to put everything on the table. I just filed an amicus brief in support of the Association of Disabled Persons in their case against the acting administrator of the Social Security Administration to stop them from dismantling the administration so that it cannot function.
Fabulous. Charles, let's take the next question.
Yes, and so this question's on a slightly different issue, but we did receive quite a few from Edward in Torrington, who asks, will you fight for Kilmar Abrego Garcia's return to the U.S. after his illegal deportation to El Salvador and stand up for the constitutional protections to which all citizens, immigrants, and visitors are entitled?
Well,
I,
the answer, uh, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
William. Did you
No,
want to
go
go
ahead.
first?
Yeah, I'll go first,
Yep.
and I think I speak for Congressman Larson. Um, will I? I am. We're fighting every single day. You know, I was among the first to sue to stop the president from denying, banning birthright citizenship. We are formulating our legal strategy right now to try to assist grad students who are being kidnapped and renditioned and taken off the street. And yes, we're worried about students here in Connecticut, at our flagship university, UConn, at our state colleges, universities, at our private colleges and universities. So it is the policy, let me be very clear, of the state of Connecticut. As your attorney general, let me make it crystal clear. It is the policy of the state of Connecticut to respect, honor, and protect immigrants and immigrant families. This attack on Mr. Garcia is not just an attack on the rule of law. It's not just the attack on the man and the family in Maryland. It's an attack on all of us. And I will stand up with the Maryland Attorney General and all our other attorneys general to fight this attack on America and American people and our civil rights.
President Trump should bring him home immediately. It's that simple and straightforward. They have the ability to do that. I cannot believe the comments that I've heard coming out of the White House today. It's why more than 100 of our Democratic colleagues have signed a letter demanding the president use all of his authority immediately to bring him home safely. My former colleague and good friend, Chris Van Hollen, senator from Maryland, has traveled down there, et cetera, and is being denied access as well by the Venezuelan government. This is an outrage. And this is something where President Trump should be standing up for Americans, and especially for someone who, at his request, was taken out of the country and is there taken out illegally, in my estimation, and also now is in danger down there. We should be doing everything within our power to do so, and we'll keep putting pressure on the Trump administration to do so. And I'm glad that we have people like Attorney General Tong that are leading the fight legally. It's one thing to be able to do things legislatively that sometimes can take time. It's another thing to be able to step in and do things legally. But on all fronts, this is going to continue to be pressure that's put on the administration, frankly, to do the right thing here on behalf of Mr. Garcia and his family. Why don't we take the next question, Charles?
Our next question comes from Carmeta in Windsor, who asks, how and why is it legal for Elon Musk to be involved in White House business the way that he is?
Well, quite frankly, it's not. But Elon Musk should be subject to going through approval, which is the normal process for a cabinet member who has to be ratified and approved by the Senate. Elon Musk is not a cabinet member, according to Mr. Trump, and so therefore it does not have to go through the Senate. But even volunteers under the law are required to have to disclose their earnings and disclose their personal records, et cetera, to be reviewed by the government so that there are no conflicts of interest and they're upheld. But this is a special status that's given, and presidents have used it before in the past, and it's usually for a limited amount of time. But even here, Trump has said he'll determine how much time, not the law, because Trump believes that he's above the law. And I think you have a case of billionaires who believe that because they're billionaires, they know better than average Americans. there's a reason the preamble starts, "We the people," because this is about the people. And it doesn't matter whether you're a billionaire or not. This is about the American people, and that's who you're accountable to. And they are trying to circumvent that. Again, giving this authority to someone who refused to come before the Ways and Means Committee to testify on what his plan is and what this Doge group is actually doing, especially as it relates to Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. And how can you possibly have a democracy if you cannot hold elected and appointed officials accountable for their action and bring them before Congress to testify before hearings about what their proposals and what the intent of their actions are, and to answer the questions that the representatives of the democracy have of them. Attorney General?
Yes.
It looks like you're muted, Attorney General.
All right. Am I good now?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Just to echo what Congressman Larson said, it's not legal at all. It is utterly unlawful and unconstitutional on so many levels. What the congressman alluded to in terms of his confirmation and his examination for his position is something called the appointments clause. And what that means is that if you exercise significant authority in the federal government, the appointments clause requires you to go through the appointments process. And he did not go through the appointments process. So it violates the appointments clause on its face. It's also unlawful in so many respects. The actions that he has taken violate a number of federal statutes. They didn't follow any of the proper procedures in order to enable Elon Musk or his band of wannabe hackers and stormtroopers to tear up the federal government. And to give them access, for example, to the central payment system of the US Treasury. I mean, how crazy is that? You know, it's as if somebody said, our friend Charles is running this call. It's as if somebody said, a president said, "Hey, Charles, you're a good guy. I don't know what you know about nuclear submarines, but I want you to cut some waste, fraud, and abuse that I think is happening over at the submarine base in Groton. Why don't we just drop you in there into the most secure part of that facility, and you do whatever you want. You do whatever you see fit." Would anybody think that that's lawful or constitutional? No, it's totally bonkers. And so that's what's happening. But let me just say, I get this question a lot. People are frustrated that it's unlawful. Why can't anybody stop them from doing it if it's so utterly illegal? And the answer is this: we are a country of laws, okay? And we don't. There's no king, at least not yet. There's no invisible hand from on high. There's no superseding power that makes us do things. Yes, for regular people, there are police and there are court orders and all of that. But at the end of the day, America's democracy requires all of us to play by the rules. It is one big honor system. That's what a democracy is. And if somebody openly flouts and doesn't follow the rules like the President Elon Musk are doing, then the whole thing breaks down. And in that system, okay, if it's one big honor system and people don't honor the system, the answer is the people have to get out there and put pressure on them to follow the rules and to put this thing back into its proper place where Congress does its job, president does his job, states do their job, and everybody follows the rules and they listen to the courts.
Thank you, Attorney General.
Thank you.
Charles, let's take the next question.
Our next question comes from Amanda in Newington, and she asks, what are you doing to protect Connecticut residents from the SAVE Act?
Well, what I like to say is not enough to start, because the SAVE Act passed in the House of Representatives and is now on its way to the Senate. I voted against the SAVE Act, but unfortunately it passed. And the bill, as some may or may not be aware, is creates and adds burdensome requirements that make it harder for Americans without passports, military service members, and married women to register to vote. Listen, we should be doing everything possible to make sure we allow legally through the process everyone eligible to register and vote. That's the main ingredient in our democracy that we need to make sure is there, is safe, is sound, and preserved. The bill still has to go through the Senate. And of course, there, as you can imagine, both Chris Murphy and Senator Blumenthal are leading the charge and are united against it. But, if our colleagues were really serious about protecting Americans' rights to vote, they would bring up a bill that I'm a strong sponsor of, which is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, that would ensure every citizen can participate in our democracy safely and securely. So I would ask all of you out there to reach out. In Connecticut, again, you can count on your 2 United States senators, but to reach out to other states and even to call DC, to the Senate, and make sure that the Republicans are aware that this is being watched closely, and that we want to see this act defeated. I don't know if the Attorney General wants to add to that.
Yeah, except to say that the president is trying to, by executive order, implement key parts of the SAVE Act. And I've
Right.
sued already. We're going to fight them tooth and nail in court. This is about denying the most sacred right of all of the rights. Forget about religion, speech, press, assembly, petition, right? The right to vote, the franchise is the fundamental right from which all other rights emanate. And it keeps us free. It is the only thing that keeps us free. And if you compromise that right, if you try to disenfranchise millions upon millions of people, which is what they're trying to do, then really we are lost.
Okay, thank you, Attorney General. Charles?
Yep. Our next question is from Bonnie in Bloomfield, who shares a comment. Our Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security should not be gutted or privatized, and our data should not be accessible and used by anyone other than vetted, trained, responsible Social Security staff.
Well, thank you, Bonnie, for that question. And of course, we wholeheartedly agree with everything that you said in that statement. And Bonnie, as you know, every citizen, for instance, has a Social Security number issued by the agency. And the agency has the earning records of tens of millions of Americans, as well as health records of individuals that have applied for disability benefits. It is already illegal for this data to be accessed improperly. There is a pending lawsuit in the courts, and perhaps the Attorney General knows more about this, challenging DOJ's access to SSA database, and the court has issued a temporary restraining order barring DOJ from accessing the data. But this is a fight that we're all in together because we want to make sure that our bill not only strengthens the civil penalties for violation of the SSA's data protection procedures, but allows anyone whose data has been improperly accessed to seek damages within the federal court. Attorney General?
Yes, this is a big part of what we're doing, not just with the Social Security Administration, but also IRS, Treasury, all the places in which DOGE is trying to access information, not just about individuals, but about states. And this is all highly secure, private information that should not be divulged, and they're doing it in violation of the law. So know that we're suing.
Thank you, Attorney General.
Our next question
Go
comes.
ahead, Charles.
Our next question comes from Barbara in Hartford, who asks, what will these cuts to Social Security mean for senior citizens who live alone and this is their only income? How will seniors pay for their living expenses?
Well, that's an excellent question, Barbara, and it means the same thing for people living alone or living together. It would be a cut in a program that desperately needs not only to be protected, but be enhanced. As I said earlier in the introduction, the last time that Social Security was enhanced by the Congress across the board was back in 1971. Richard Nixon was president of the United States. Social Security continues to be the #1 anti-poverty program for the elderly, and frankly, also for children until the child tax credit becomes permanent. And Americans know this, and that's why the turnout was so strong in Torrington last week and in Hartford, where the Attorney General so eloquently addressed people as well. And we're going to continue this fight because we not only believe that it's important to protect Social Security in its current state, it's equally as important to expand it so that there hasn't been a benefit increase since 1971. And for a number of people, including teachers and police officers and firefighters and municipal employees, the repeal of weapon GPO was absolutely essential. But just like everything else, it has to be paid for, including the taxes that people pay on Social Security. That's double taxation. That's wrong and should never have been included back in 1983, but it was. And it needs to be repealed and taken off the books, as well as raising people out of the depths of poverty. Again, most of whom are women. More than 5 million of our fellow Americans who get below poverty level checks currently from the Social Security Administration because Congress hasn't acted. We need to make the new floor for Social Security 125% of what the poverty rate is, so that no one can ever again work all their lives, contribute into the program, and retire into poverty. Nobody gets wealthy on Social Security, but it is the subsistence that is needed. And for 40% of all Americans on Social Security, it's the only benefit that they have. That's why this is so vitally important and why it needs not only to be protected, it needs to be expanded in a way that it helps people. A lot of things have transpired since 1971. I think Barbara would agree with that, Charles. And Attorney General, do you?
Congressman Larson, 1971, it's crazy that we haven't expanded since 1971. And many of us weren't even around in 1971. And it's just long overdue, and the American people need it. And let me just put it into focus. 42% of Americans over 65 years old. 42%. That's almost half. They need their Social Security to help pay for food and for medication and for housing. And then of that number, 15% of all people on Social Security count on Social Security for most of their income. I mean, that's a huge number of people. And now Elon Musk and the president just want to pull the rug out from underneath them. What will those people do? They will suffer.
Exactly. Well said. Charles?
Our next question comes from Lauren in Bristol, who asks, what is being done to protect student loan borrowers if Trump eliminates the Department of Education?
Well, again, Lauren, that's a great question and timely. I'm so proud of Jahana Hayes, who has taken the lead on this in Congress and introduced a bill, as you may know, and I know the Attorney General knows this, Trump has proposed eliminating the Department of Education. Can you think of a more absurd thing in giving the importance and significance of education in all, and to compete and to thrive nationally and state by state and in our communities? Nothing's more important and essential than education. And to eliminate that, I commend Jahana Hayes for not only saying, no, we have to make sure that we preserve the program, but we have to preserve the Department of Education as well, so that we can continue to focus on and make sure that our children are getting the kind of education, that educators are getting the kind of training, that the credentials and the testing and all the things that need to be done are being done in a way that's educationally sound and improves the quality of life and education and opportunity here in this country. President Trump wants the Small Business Administration to run the program. I think that is so wrong-headed. They are not equipped with staffing, resources, or expertise. The bottom line is they've been charged with finding $2 trillion in cuts so that they can fund the tax cut for the wealthiest 1%. And they've targeted the Department of Education. Attorney General?
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussion tonight about legislation and about process and the rule of law and constitutional crisis and lawsuits. At the end of the day, what really matters is people are getting hurt right now. President is doing so much damage and hurting a lot of people. If you're a special ed student, if you're a student loan borrower, if you're a bus driver, a school bus driver, if you're a teacher or a paraprofessional, if you're on a board of ed here in Connecticut, what are you going to do when they cut dollars that are necessary for you to get the services you need? And that's why we've sued. We sued on the Department of Education, on their efforts to dismantle the Department of Education. I'm ashamed to say it's Linda McMahon from the state of Connecticut who is charged with dismantling what is a vital, pivotal federal agency that provides so many important services to people here in our country.
Thank you, Attorney General. Charles?
Our next question comes from Paul in Southington, who asks, with the balance of power of our three branches of government, how can these cuts to the Social Security Administration happen without congressional approval?
Well, it's a great question, but I also happen to know that there are a number of ongoing lawsuits to challenge the administration's cuts across the federal government. So I want to turn it over to
Yeah,
Attorney General Tong, who filed a brief just yesterday. So
yeah.
I'll let
The,
him
the,
answer.
the answer is, again, I talked about this earlier. They're just doing it right now in violation of the law. Um, and I guess the question is, how can they? They can't do it lawfully, but that hasn't stopped them from doing it, which is why we have so many lawsuits already. Not just the brief I wrote yesterday in support of the Association of Disabled Persons in their lawsuit on Social Security, but on the freeze of all federal funding, which he tried to pull off from the second Monday of this administration. Congressman Larson and I were in a press conference in the governor's press conference room announcing that lawsuit. And here's a really important question. And I'm sorry, I'm now using the light from the mirror to get some light on my face. But if you remember, Congressman Larson, we had that press conference about 4:30 p.m. that day. And they had issued, OMB had issued its memorandum saying we're going to freeze all federal funding the night before. But even before our press conference at about 2 p.m., even before I sued, they had rescinded the memo. Okay. Why did they rescind the memo? I can tell you why. Because Republican governors and Republican attorneys general called the White House and said, "What are you doing?" Okay. Republican states are far bigger takers of federal funding than states like Connecticut are. They need that money. And people who receive Social Security and Medicaid in those states, they need that money. And so that's why we got to put pressure on them. We got to, like we were, John and I were out in the streets, right, during these hands-off rallies. That's why it's so important that we speak up and get loud. And people say, well, Attorney General, what gives you hope in this moment? One of the things that gives me hope, and I think you should all remember, this is the sovereign state of Connecticut. We are joined by our consent with 49 other states in a federation known as the United States of America. We are still independent of New York and Florida and Texas and Rhode Island. And that means America is too big, too unruly, too chaotic, sometimes a little crazy. We're just too big and massive to be swallowed whole. Okay, if this were Denmark, this would be over already, but it's not. It's America. So we got to get loud. You can make it hard on them every step of the way.
Well, I think, Charles, we're running a little tight, but I think we'll try one more question, and then we'll have to wrap up. And based on how we finish that question, I want to thank, before we go in there, I want to thank the Attorney General for, with his busy schedule, as you can see, he's out on the road already, probably traveling to half a dozen different places and won't get home until after 11 tonight. But thank you for participating and being with us. And Charles, if you could read give us the last question.
Yes, thank you, Congressman. Our final question comes from Deborah in Windsor Locks, and she asks, with the regional office that serves Connecticut Medicare beneficiaries being closed, how do we get information about coverage or questions answered?
Well, first and foremost, Deborah, always call our office. We're here to assist with all questions, but especially any question as it relates to the federal government, or anytime you're having an issue or a problem getting through with any agency. Please call our office. There is no question or wait times that will increase with less staff and less offices to assist beneficiaries, but we're going to continue to make sure that we're assisting uh, all of the people who call in. And I hope people have been able to participate tonight and appreciate the fact that we are getting to your answers. And if you feel like there's more that we could add or have others, please feel free to call and contact our offices. And let me again thank the Attorney General for joining us and give him the last word before we convene.
Well,
And
let me just say, thank you, John Larson, for showing us how to fight. I think I have a reputation for being a fighter, and I'm swinging every single day. But I look to John Larson and how he's not just a fighter; he's a brawler too. And there was a video of him calling out Elon Musk, and there's video of me from these hands-off rallies, getting you know getting really aggressive about where we are and getting emotional about it. And I think, Congressman Larson, sometimes people think we get a little too hot, right? That we run a little too hot. But it's because it's so important, because it's so personal. There's no, in this moment, especially with respect to Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, everything that matters to us, in this moment, there's no such thing as too hot. We've all got to run even hotter to protect our country and our families and the people we love. So thank you, Congressman Larson, for showing us the way.
Andrew, thank you again. Greatly appreciate you taking time to be with us. And I want to thank all of you who have been able to listen in this evening. We're going to continue to do our town halls and reaching out, because I think it's vitally important that we not only do our job and legislate down in Washington, D.C., but first and foremost is that we're back home listening to what the people have to say. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And again, Attorney General Tong, thank you so much for being
Thank
with
you.
us.
Thank
God
you.
bless. God bless America.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.